Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we are making yeast cinnamon rolls, or just basically cinnamon rolls. The reason why I mentioned that they have yeast is because last year we made a version of cinnamon rolls without yeast because I couldn't get my hands on any, no matter where I tried to look for it. So we used baking powder instead. I will go ahead and link that recipe here on the little iCard at the top right of this video, so you can reference back to it. But today I'm going to show you exactly how we made these cinnamon rolls, and this is rather a smaller batch, so you can definitely cut it in half if you wanted to make an even smaller batch than this. So let's get started. The most important part here is to make sure to proof our yeast, make sure that it stays alive. So I'm taking my half cup of milk and I'm placing it into the microwave for only 30 seconds. You don't want your milk to be too hot, or otherwise the yeast will die. I'm also adding in 2 tablespoons of sugar to the warm milk, and I'm adding 2 teaspoons of yeast into this mixture, and I'm going to go ahead and just whisk it, make sure that all the yeast, milk, and sugar are well combined. And then we're going to set this aside for approximately 5 or 7 minutes. It should start to foam up. You'll see it as soon as you set it aside, and again, it's very important that your milk is not too hot. For the kneading or the mixing, you can definitely do this by hand or in a stand mixer. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in my 2 cups of flour. I'm also adding in 2 large eggs. I'm adding in 3 tablespoons of melted butter. Make sure that it is slightly cooled, so you may want to do this in the beginning when we're proofing our yeast. I also added in half a teaspoon of salt. And now, after approximately 5 to 7 minutes of proofing, you should be able to see a little bit of foam on top of your milk, sugar, and yeast mixture. And we're just going to go ahead and add this into our mixing bowl. If you are using a stand mixer, make sure to use the dough hook. If you are doing this by hand, make sure to make a little pile or a little pyramid of all-purpose flour, and then place everything in the center so that you can slowly knead everything together. This process did take approximately 10 minutes for the dough to come together. You'll notice that it is a rather slow process, but we are trying to make sure that all the ingredients incorporate. If you do this by hand, it might take slightly longer, so just be sure to be patient. What I did do in between all the mixing, I did go ahead and stop my mixer and then just made sure to bring in the flour that was on the edges to make sure that it combined with the wet ingredients in the center. Another thing that I did as all of this was mixing, you will notice that in the written recipe for all-purpose flour, it calls for 2 cups and 5 tablespoons for kneading. If you are doing this in your stand mixer, go ahead and slowly add in the 5 tablespoons as this is mixing at this point. If you are doing this by hand, add in the 5 tablespoons of flour while you are kneading your dough on a flat surface, and also make sure that you do have a surface that is pre-floured if you're doing this by hand, so that none of the dough sticks to your surface. It's also a good idea to have a bench scraper when doing this by hand, so that you can scrape any dough that gets stuck while you are kneading. Remember to stop from time to time, add in the flour, scrape the sides of the bowl just to make sure that everything incorporates. And remember that this process is a little bit more lengthy and it takes a little bit more time than doing cinnamon rolls or than doing bread with just baking powder. After approximately 10 minutes of kneading, your dough should look a little bit like this. So your dough is going to be a little bit sticky to the touch. As you can see, it's sticking a little bit to the spatula, it's sticking to the hook, but we are not going to add in any more dough because we will do that when we roll out this dough to add in the filling. So if we add in too much flour, it's just going to make for a very thick and hard dough. Your cinnamon rolls aren't going to be soft. So your dough should look like this. It should stick a little bit to the bowl, it should stick to your spatula, and maybe even to your hands. So what I'm doing here is I'm just setting it to one side, and I did go ahead and spray the bowl with non-stick spray. I just forgot to record that part, so make sure to spray the bowl with non-stick cooking spray. And then once you've done that, you're going to cover your bowl and place it in a warm place, or cover it with a towel and allow it to proof for approximately 60 to 90 minutes. You should see it double in size. This is exactly what we're looking for so that we can move on to our next step. While our dough is resting and proofing, we're going to go ahead and make the filling for in between our dough. And I did go ahead and place 4 tablespoons of butter that has been softened in the microwave, so not completely melted, just softened. And then I am going to add in 2/3 cups of brown sugar. Make sure that they are packed very tightly. I'm also adding in 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, and this is what's going to make the filling or the center of our cinnamon rolls. It's very yummy, very delicious, and it's truly what makes a cinnamon roll, hence the cinnamon, and it's so easy to make. Once all the ingredients are in your bowl, just go ahead and take a fork and simply crumble all of it together, mixing the butter with the rest of the ingredients. That's why it's also important that the butter is soft, so that it is a little bit easier for you to be able to combine this mixture and be able to mix all of it. Be patient, it does take quite a bit of muscle to make all of this combine, but like I said, it's so yummy, it is worth it. I allowed my dough to only rest for 60 minutes. This is what it looks like. It doubled in size. It's perfect. You can see the little amount of heat right there in the background. So now what I'm doing is I'm simply taking a little bit of flour, which is approximately 1/4 cup, and I'm placing it or powdering a silicone mat that I'm going to use to roll out this dough. So like I mentioned earlier, this dough will be a little bit sticky, so be sure to use a bench scraper or a little spatula to first remove it from the bowl and place it on top of a very well floured surface. The reason why we want to use these, the spatula and a very well floured surface, is like I said, because the dough is very soft, it will be a little bit sticky, but we don't want it to get stiff. That's why it doesn't have too much flour. So as you can see here, what I'm doing is I'm basically using my fingers to spread it into a rectangle. And once you have the bottom covered with a little bit of the flour from the surface, go ahead and turn it over and continue to use your fingers and your hands to spread it into a rectangle. Then go ahead and take a rolling pin and simply start to spread the dough lengthwise, so like a hot dog, the long way, just to be sure that you are able to cut as many cinnamon rolls as you want. The reason I say that is because you can cut either 8 or 9 cinnamon rolls depending on the size of pan that you are using. I will leave the dimensions of the pan that I used below. I ended up cutting 9 cinnamon rolls. There isn't a specific length that I used for the dough. I could just tell and I eyeballed it. I know that's gonna bother some of you, but just eyeball it and cut the rolls into as many as you would like. Since this dough does grow and it proves and it doubles in size, it's not that imperative that you know the length of the dough. As long as you cut the cinnamon rolls into the amount that you want for your pan. Once you're satisfied with the length of the dough, go ahead and place all of the mixture that we did, or the filling that we did earlier, into the center of your dough, and then simply take either a spatula, or you can also do this with your hands, but it does get a little bit messy. Take a spatula and simply spread it all over, all the way to the edges of the dough, so that we can be sure that with every cut and every edge we get a little bit of the filling, and that it bakes into the cinnamon rolls so that it can have that cinnamon rolly taste. After you have all of the filling into the dough, go ahead and start rolling from one end. Make sure that when you are rolling, you roll tightly, but it doesn't have to be perfect. So just go ahead and roll using your fingers all the way until you get to the end and form a long log with your hands of cinnamon rolls. If there is any excess flour, don't worry about it. It will bake into your cinnamon roll. It's not going to taste floury, I promise. But like I said, it is imperative to be sure that these are well floured so that they don't stick to your hands or to your surface. Here I confused myself a little bit because at first I wanted to cut 8 cinnamon rolls, but then I realized that the pan that I was using would look a little bit cuter if I cut 9 cinnamon rolls. So you'll see me making a little bit of a mistake. But like I said, if you cut 8, 9, it's totally fine. If you want to make them bigger, if you want to make one huge cinnamon roll, then that's even better probably. This is really up to you, but also keep in mind that you can cut this recipe in half. So if you wanted to make 4 cinnamon rolls, that's also possible. To bake your cinnamon rolls, you can use either a baking Pyrex dish or an aluminum squared cake pan, a round cake pan, whatever you have available. I did go ahead and spray my pan with non-stick baking spray, and here I'm simply taking my cinnamon rolls, and as you can see, when I place them, I do fan them out just a tiny bit to make sure that they have that they're able to spread and that they have room to grow and they're not too tightly packed. As you'll see here, after we allow them to rest for an additional 30 to 45 minutes, these are going to get a little bit puffy and chubby and ready to go into baking. After 45 minutes, this is how the cinnamon rolls look, and I did go ahead and preheat my oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, and we are going to bake between 15 to 20 minutes until the tops are golden brown, but the sides will still look a little bit more pale. You can also leave them in for a little bit longer, but I personally like a much softer cinnamon roll. While our cinnamon rolls are baking, I did go ahead and take the time to make our frosting. I'm using 6 ounces of cream cheese, 6 tablespoons of butter. All of these ingredients are at room temperature and soft to be sure that they are able to mix a lot better. And what I'm doing here is I'm basically creaming the butter and the cream cheese first, allowing both of them to combine before I add the rest of the ingredients, so that the cream cheese and the butter are able to melt a little bit better once we have the frosting ready, and so that it's a little bit less lumpy. Once both of these ingredients are combined, I am going to go ahead and add in 1 tablespoon of vanilla, and I'm also adding in half a teaspoon of salt, and I'm also going to go ahead and add in 1 cup of powdered sugar to the rest of this mixture. And now that we have all the ingredients in our bowl, we're going to go ahead and mix for approximately 4 to 5 minutes until all of these combine. You may want to use a slightly bigger bowl than I did here, or just be careful when mixing. All of these ingredients should combine. Don't worry if you do have lumpy cream cheese and butter, it's totally fine because we're going to apply this frosting while our cinnamon rolls are still warm, so it is going to melt into the cinnamon rolls anyway. This is how my frosting ended up looking. I am going to just go ahead and wrap this and set it to the side and go ahead and apply it once my cinnamon rolls come out of the oven. I left my cinnamon rolls in the oven for 16 minutes. Be sure to keep an eye on them. This is exactly how we want them. We want them to be golden brown at the top and a little bit more pale on the sides. You don't want to overcook these because once again, when you remove them from the oven, they will continue to cook from the pan. So be sure to take them out once you see the tops are browning like this, because you don't want to end up with hard, thick cinnamon rolls. We're going to allow these to cool for approximately 10 minutes, and as soon as the 10 minutes pass, I am going to start adding in the frosting. You can definitely use a spatula, you can frost these individually, but what I like to do is I just like to take all the frosting and put it over the pan while it's still warm, and just go ahead and spread the entire pan of cinnamon rolls. And it's going to taste delicious because it's going to start to melt into the little crevices and the cracks of the cinnamon rolls. I do hope that you love this recipe. Don't forget to also check out our recipe from last year where we made these but with baking powder. I will leave the recipe in the little iCard on the top right, so you can check that out. Don't forget to leave me a comment, leave me your questions down below, subscribe to my channel, make sure to share this video with a friend, hit the like button, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!